Hello everyone, David here. Today we're going to talk about Microsoft Identity Manager SP1 and its integration with the multi-factor authentication, or MFA as we call it, and changes that we are adding in due to the deprecation of the Azure Multi-Factor Authentication SDK. And this is going to be deprecated on November 14th, 2018. Currently, MIM customers can still utilize the Azure Multi-Factor Authentication integration, but in November, everyone needs to switch over to the alternative. So part one, we're going to talk about what that integration is, if you're not aware of it. Part two, we'll look at how to get the conversion. And then we might have a part three, but at this point, we'll just go with part one at the moment. So multi-factor authentication, MFA integration, what do we have? Well, we have an integration for self-service password reset. And what this allows us to do is go through this typical self-service password reset, but also being able to add a mobile phone authentication. So essentially enable users for self-service. Again, the typical helps reduce the support help desk calls. We do allow for the support of account unlock, but then we have this integration for Azure MFA integration. And we have the old OTP SMS or email, and again, we do support cross-browser support, again, for most major browsers. So that's one integration that we utilize the MFA Azure SDK. The second scenario that enables this or utilizes the Azure MFA SDK is what we call PAM. And if you don't know what PAM is, again, it allows you, the organization, to secure their highly critical or highly privileged accounts. This reestablishes the control over a what we call a compromised Active Directory environment by maintaining a separate environment, so a separate forest, that is also unaffected or is locked down. And then this allows you to isolate the use of privileged accounts and reduce the risk of those credentials being stolen. So how does that happen? The attacker, well, can target your admin, can target your HR, it could target your accounting folks. And typically what happens is it just looks for a footprint of the organization. It determines what and who. It lures these administrators, and I'm not talking just Active Directory administrators, but it could be your payroll, it could be any type of services that maybe use Active Directory or maybe not use Active Directory. But in most cases are the Active Directory integrated accounts. So what and how everyone should do their day-to-day business with a unprivileged user. So normal user, no privileges, and you only grant those privileges when needed and remove it afterwards, aka JIT. And retain and review audit activity pertaining to those accounts. And the process we do that is what we call the PAM forest or priv forest for privileged accounts. And this account is associated with a corporate forest account. And MIM does all that mapping. And the way we do that is for the PAM forest using shadow groups, which is essentially is a copy of the corp admins and is a shadow principal. So it works pretty well. In this service, we allow for Azure MFA. So elevate a role, and then from there, you get a phone call to say, hey, is this you? And then you go ahead and approve that item. So I want to show you these because sometimes, if for folks that are not aware or have not seen this, I thought it would be a good idea to show the current state, and then we'll move on to actually moving this to the on-prem Azure MFA. So what we want to do first, we're talking about MIM SSPR and MIM PAM as the integration scenarios that utilize this Azure MFA SDK. We're going to install the latest MIM hotfix. Again, when the enhancement is released, it will be a public announcement, and then of course this video would be accurate. For the Azure MFA server, we're going to install a certificate. That way we can apply an SSL binding to that. And then also we're assuming that the Azure MFA SDK is already configured for your MIM environment or your PAM environment. And then we're simply going to convert the SDK to the on-premise. So that's the real high-level agenda that we want to go in. All right, so now let's look at what else is related to SSPR. So we have several different documents. Here is the Azure multi-factor authentication. Again, it's on the docs.microsoft site. And of course, what is Azure MFA authentication? Again, it's something you know, something you have, and something you are. So very high level, what is it? And typically it would constrain of two-factor authentication. So it would be something you know or something you are, or it's something you know or something you have. So one of the two. So when we're working with self-service password reset, as we talked about, we did have an announcement on our doc site. And we also talk about we were working on something. So this is what we're working on. Typically, you would go to the classic, what we call the classic portal, and then from there, you would download this SDK package. So this is no longer available to download. You have to open up a support case in order to do that. So that's sort of what has gone away. So now let's go on to what it looks like. So typical configuration, we have the license key, group key, cert pass. Again, these are currently what's in. When you apply the hotfix, you will see two new entries added. These two entries is loc MFA and loc server. So these are the two new entries. So let's look at what a user would look like now. So if we go to our client and we're logged in, we're going to do password registration. We're going to put in the password. And once we put in the password, you'll see that we have the phone number. And again, it's grayed out. This is an option for you to have. We're going to hit next. We're going to do our questions. Next. And there we have it. We've registered for password reset. Now, what does it look like when you actually do the reset? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see. So now it's going to ask, it's going to be calling me. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. We should receive a phone call here. So now we see the phone call. We're going to go ahead and answer it. All right. We have verified the call. We can go ahead and next. And now we can go through our setup. All right. So we can do an unlock or we can do a password reset. So I'm not going to do this. This is my test lab, so I don't need to do the unlock. But that's how the process would occur on registration and password reset. So now let's flip over to our PAM environment, and we're going to do the same thing. And here we have our Pam server, and we're going to log in as our Pam user. So I am logged in now, and I have this role called Corp Admins, and then it is MFA enabled. So I'm going to go ahead and activate that. And I'm going to do it for 5 minutes because we don't really need a whole lot of time. I just want to show you the MFA configuration. And I don't need a Y. I'm going to just hit submit. And then you can see we have a call coming in. There we have it. So it has been verified. And now we should see an expiration time come through. So now we have our expiration time, and that's because we validated the MFA authorization of my with my phone number. So there we have it, the PAM scenario and the synchronization or the SSPR scenario.